Ahmet Alioglu joins us from Leicester here in the UK. Thanks, as always, for speaking to us, Ahmet. So what's your reaction to what's been announced?
Well, from the presser today, Rupen, between President Erdogan and President Putin, it seems that the two leaders have put forward a clear, feasible and practical plan to hold the ceasefire for another 150 hours. So if you look at the two countries' standpoints, first for Turkey, achieved what it looked for from the safe zone. They want the YPG elements to be away from the border, to be removed from the border. And it seems with the withdrawal of the United States and the replacement of the Russian forces and the Russian military police in the region, this is going to be practical on the ground, going to be implemented in the coming few days. Also for Turkey, it is important that the two sides agreed on the constitutional committee that is going to resume its work on the 30th of October later this month. So for Turkey, the two important things are happening on the ground. Now, when it comes to Russia, another important thing also for Turkey, not to forget that they are going to convince the Russian side of the 12 observation posts that Turkey wants to establish in the region to guarantee the security and safety of the people or the refugees going back to this region. Still, we don't know how this is going to play out on the ground, whether the regime is going to take some of the region there, whether the Russian joint patrols with the Turkish side is going to be the main controlling power in the region. This remains to be seen to the committees on the ground that is going to implement the measures and the procedures. Now, when it comes to the Russians, they're talking about talks. They're more interested in talks between the YPG from the one hand and the Syrian regime. Also, they're speaking about the Adana Agreement and activating the Adana Agreement by involving Turkey and the Syrian regime in more talks and negotiations. President Erdogan didn't comment on this, which means that we will see if President Erdogan is going to start any kind of rapprochement, if possible, with the Syrian regime. In the past few years, he was staunchly criticizing the regime and saying that there's no way that the Turkish government will meet with the Assad as the representative of the Syrian people. But this remains on the table to see how this is going to develop in the coming few months.
And what does this all mean for Russia? What's in this deal for them, do you think?
Well, Rupen, for Washington, President Trump said it clearly that this is strategically brilliant. It seems that to have at least 300 soldiers on the ground to preserve Washington's right to the petrol fields in eastern parts of Syria. That's the ultimate goal after the defeat of Daesh. For Donald Trump, that's the most important thing. Now, with the withdrawal from the region and the Russian regime or the Russian forces on the ground superseding and replacing the American troops, it seems that the non-interventionist policies that Barack Obama, the former American president, was speaking about is now being delivered by Donald Trump. He is withdrawing all the troops from Syria and leaving it to more regional powers, as he said more than once in his tweets, that he wants the regional power to be more involved. But this is a clear message to the YPG and to other allies in the region, especially Saudi Arabia, that even if you have American troops on the ground, it doesn't mean that the United States is going to pick up fights on your behalf, whether in the face of Iran or in the face of the Syrian regime. At the end of the day, the Americans are looking for their interests, and for Donald Trump administration, it seems that the withdrawal from the region is the ultimate goal at this moment.
And do you believe that this agreement shows a strengthening of ties between Turkey and Russia?
Absolutely, there is a convergent kind of standpoints between the two leaders so far, and on the coming few days, the Constitutional Committee will agree on the procedures to go ahead. Now, on the ground, the joint patrol between the Russians and the Turkish forces will be on the ground, which means that it seems that the two sides are more agreeing on practical steps on the ground, unlike the United States that kept promising Turkey, but on the ground they never delivered on the promises. The Russians understand the sensitivity of the issue, and now they're asking the YPG to be completely removed. And they understand that Turkey adamantly insists on these things. They are going to agree on the return of the refugees and the Constitutional Committee. That's the most important part. If they come out with an agreement on these two issues, I think they're going to be a successful a kind of inroad in the talks between the two sides. This still the most important and stumbling block in the whole negotiation process is Russia's interest in bringing both Ankara and Damascus together on the same table. That's something that I think Ankara doesn't have the appetite for.
Okay.